Now call on Deputy Sean Kenny, who has 5 minutes.
Thank you, and I'm sharing time with Deputy Humphreys and Deputy Tuffy. The purpose of this election amendment bill is to provide for the number of members of Dáil Éireann, for the revision of the constituencies, and for the number of members to be elected for each constituency. The bill implements the recommendations of the Constituency Commission report and the European Parliament constituencies. The Commission was established under the 1997 Electoral Act to report on the constituencies for the election of members to Dáil Éireann and the European Parliament in the light of the results of the 2011 census of population. This means that, in line with the programme for government, the number of deputies elected to this House will be reduced. One of the most significant changes of this bill will be to amalgamate two large constituencies, that of Dublin North Central and the constituency of Dublin North East, where I have spent most of my career as an elected representative. I'm sorry to see, Cathaoirleach, and I'm sure you are yourself as well, that Dublin North East must go, and I'm sure a lot of people in politics, both currently and who are formerly in politics, are also perhaps a bit sorry as well. Some distinguished Dublin North East deputies have been Labour deputies. James Larkin was a Labour deputy in the 1930s. His son Dennis Larkin was elected as a Labour TD in the 1950s and in the 1960s. And Conor Cruz O'Brien was elected for the Labour Party in the 1960s and the 1970s. And Noel Brown was a deputy in part of the constituency during the late 70s. And of course, the environmentalist Sean Dublin Bay Rockall was elected as an independent deputy in the early 1980s. The new constituency now bears his name, and I believe it is a fitting tribute to him. I have to say, however, that not everybody is completely enamoured with the new constituency title. I recently met a Dublin North East constituent who said, when I told him that he would soon be in Dublin Bay North, he wanted to know, does that mean I would get more money for my house if I sold it? I wasn't able to answer him, but we cannot refer to the demise of Dublin North East without referring to Fianna Fáil's Charles J. Haughey, who in his time dominated the constituency like no other. When I first came to live in Raheny, he was the local political boss. His election campaigns had been written about before. At election time, I remember seeing builders' trucks going around putting up Fianna Fáil posters and leaving no room for anybody else to put up theirs. They also erected gigantic Fianna Fáil hoardings in strategic locations. You could not move anywhere in Dublin North East without having CJ sternly gazing down at you. His election campaign was the stuff of Tammany Hall type politics, which involved the spending of massive sums of money on electioneering, money that we now know was somebody else's. I think most of us knew that at the time, but we just couldn't prove it. Thankfully, Cathaoirleach, that type of politics has now been consigned to the past. I feel it would only be right to highlight other distinguished deputies who have been elected to Dublin North East over the years. Pat McCartan, now a Justice of the Circuit Court, was a deputy for the Workers' Party in Dublin North East in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Richard Mulcahy was a Dublin North East Fine Gael deputy in the 1930s. The only occasion where two Labour deputies were elected to Dublin North East in the same elections occurred in 1992 and again in the last general election in 2011. I remember both of those occasions very well indeed, and I want to pay tribute to all of the members of the Labour Party in Dublin North East who campaigned for all of the Labour candidates who were elected to Dáil Éireann, as well as for those candidates who stood for election under the Labour Party banner. It is also worth mentioning that Dublin North East has been abolished once before. In the 1970s, the Dublin constituencies were completely rearranged, and parts of Dublin North East was allocated to Dublin Artane and Dublin Clontarf constituencies. This arrangement existed only for the 1977 general election, and Dublin North East was again restored as a Dáil constituency. I feel, however, Cathaoirleach, that this present abolition of Dublin North East may prove to be more permanent. The new Dáil constituency of Dublin North East, which is an amalgamation of Dublin North East and Dublin North Central, is a much larger 5-seat constituency, spreading from the fringes of the inner city Dublin to Howth Head and to the edges of the more rural part of North County Dublin. As a large geographic area, it constitutes one of the largest urban constituencies in the state. And I think, Cathaoirleach, you will agree with me that the deputies who will be elected to represent the constituents of Dublin Bay North in the years to come will have a challenge to ensure that they represent them effectively. Thank you.
Thank you.